We're already week 12 of the fantasy football season. For a lot of your leagues, the trade deadline is over, and some of you have probably spent most, if not all, of your fab. Good news is, I still have some more smart stashes for you, guys that you can pick up off waivers, keep on your bench, and maybe have a chance to be contributors down the stretch. First, a reminder, if you haven't tried Underdog Fantasy, this is the time to do it. Use our promo code ENDGAME, you get a 100% deposit match up to $100, and the new customer special, if you sign up now, in week 12, Lamar Jackson just needs 1 yard. Take the higher on 0.5 total yards. Pair it up with any other pick you like, and you have a good chance to triple your money just like that. So if you haven't tried Underdog yet, do it now. Let's start with a rookie receiver who finally has a chance to make a dent in the lineup because Michael Thomas is out for a while, possibly the rest of the season. Didn't take long. Well, I guess it took longer than expected, but MT finally succumbed to injury. So that means A.T. Perry out of Wake Forest will get a chance to see more snaps. Now, the Saints were on bye last week, but when they played last, we actually saw him make a splash because he scored his first NFL touchdown. And in fact, in that game is when he also made his first NFL catch. No coincidence, MT out, Perry was forced into action, and he delivered. But it's interesting to note that not just that he caught a couple of passes and happened to score a touchdown, but he led all skill position players with 56 offensive snaps. So he was out there on the field pretty much all game. Now, Perry's not one of the best known receivers from this year's rookie class. He was a 6th round pick. Again, not a huge program in Wake Forest there, but he delivered some big plays. Here's what I like about him, not just the fact that he's going to get more opportunities now to actually do something in the league, but he is one of the few receivers I felt coming out of this draft class, and I said this way back in April, even before the NFL draft, I think he's one of the few players that has a chance to be a true X receiver in the league. He's not a huge guy, but he's 6'3". He's a little bit older than a lot of these rookies at 24. He's got experience. I think he's a guy who's got that size-speed combo that he can get down the field and he can actually make things happen regardless of coverage. Now we know Chris Olave is still going to be the number one target there. Rashid Shaheed, well, he's a guy who's going to be kind of what he is, deep threat, sometimes short slot options, some other times. Perry's going to get some of those deep shots. Derek Carr, despite missing some time with injury, has the 5th most deep throws out of all quarterbacks this league. I think he'll be back in week 12, but even if he's not, look, Jameis Winston, you already know. I don't even have to explain about him. All he does is throw deep. So Perry will get his chance. He's a guy who can make some plays happen. That big body could be a red zone threat. So there's obviously risk here. I won't go so far as to put him as a waiver wire pickup just yet, but I'm definitely keeping an eye on him. Now, you want to talk about a deep threat. How about a receiver who, as of right now, has the 7th highest ADOT, that's average depth of target, among all receivers with at least 10 targets this year? That would be Justin Watson of the Kansas City Chiefs, who up until now had been basically a guy you can roll out there in a bye week, an emergency, desperation flyer. He could hit a deep shot, he could do nothing. But we saw something a little different on Monday night against the Eagles. We saw that he was getting the most targets among all Chiefs receivers. And not just wide receivers, he actually got more targets than Travis Kelce. Kind of out of nowhere, Watson got 11 targets. The next closest wide receiver was Rashee Rice, who we assumed was the one guy there. He only got 5. I've been saying this the last couple of weeks. I feel like Rice is kind of slowly decreasing in opportunity here. I'm not sure why, but it seems like the rookie is either hitting a wall or this team is just not trusting him as much. He's been effective against zone, but he's having a hard time beating man coverage. Maybe that's it. I don't know. But Rashee Rice has just kind of remained steady. He's not really doing a lot the last couple of weeks. You might remember they have other guys there like Sky Moore. Remember him? Yeah, he's got all of 6 catches over the last 4 games. Kadarius Toney, remember when he was a thing, or some people thought he might be a thing? Got a total of 5 receptions over the past 4 games. Oh yeah, didn't they trade for McCole Hardman? Since they got him those last 4 weeks, he's got 8 catches for a total of 41 yards. That's right, deep threat McCole Hardman is averaging 5 yards per catch. And then there's MVS. So if you watched that game, or if you just saw any sort of highlights or ever been on social media, you might have seen this clip where he could have caught the game-winning touchdown, but instead decided not to. Look, it wasn't just that one. Out of 3 targets, Marquez Valdez-Scantling didn't catch a single one. This is kind of what he has been even back in his Green Bay days. It really makes you wonder why the Chiefs didn't sign a big name free agent receiver this offseason or try to trade for one before the deadline. We'll see if that comes back to bite them. For right now, they need somebody who is trustworthy. It looks like right now in this receiving core, Justin Watson might be the guy that Mahomes trusts the most. Now, no guarantees that Watson all of a sudden continues to see a huge surge in targets. Again, he's mostly just been a deep threat in his career. But when you look around and who else has he got to throw to, Watson just might be the guy who starts to take over as the number one receiver in Kansas City. We know that's valuable. Even though Watson isn't a young player, a new name, or anything like that, we've got to look at the trends here. It seems like almost every other receiver in this offense is trending downward. Watson is the one guy who's trending up. And that leads me to another veteran receiver who also seems to be trending up out of necessity. So you look at the Arizona Cardinals, you think Kyler Murray coming back, oh, that means Marquise Brown is going to smash. That means a rookie like Michael Wilson should do even better. Well, here's the problem. Both guys are hurt. Hollywood Brown either is more hurt than he's letting on or that we know of, or he's just struggling for some other reason because he looked terrible this past week. The past 2 games with Kyler Murray back at quarterback, Hollywood has a total of 3 catches, and they've gone for a total of 46 yards. Michael Wilson with a shoulder injury, not practicing early for week 12, hasn't played for a couple of weeks. Zach Pascal even is hurt as well, and so that leads me to Greg Dortch. That's right, you remember Greg Dortch from last year when he was a hot waiver wire pickup for a minute? Greg Dortch had all of 1 reception this entire season before week 11, and then here he comes to lead the way for the Cardinals. Last week, he caught 6 of his 8 targets for 76 yards. All of those numbers were good enough to lead the team. Now that looks like a clear outlier when you talk about his game log for this season because all he's been is a special teams guy. Like I said, hadn't even been involved at all as a receiver. But this isn't out of nowhere because you look at last season, he caught 52 passes for 467 yards. We know he's got some chemistry with Kyler Murray, and so now that he's stepped up again, why won't he get more opportunities? Wilson doesn't seem like he's healthy still. Hollywood, it's just so hard to say what's going on there. But Dortch is a guy they just might need to lean on again. And so while you might not think of him as a high upside play, man, if he's going to keep getting that many targets, he will be. And there were a few weeks last year, like I said, where fantasy owners were playing him and he was paying off. Only thing with Dortch is he's probably a short-term play here. Probably not going to want to stretch him out for the fantasy playoffs because the Cardinals still are going to be the last team to have their bye in week 14. And the schedule out there is not that great. But you need somebody to help you out this week, maybe next week. I think Dortch is worth a look in deep leagues. Now, you know I have to give you a running back stash. Hard to believe there's just not any new young upcoming running backs there that nobody knows about. But I'm going to give you another handcuff that is worth picking up because he's still out there in about 3/4 of fantasy leagues. Don't forget about Kenneth Gainwell. Now, Gainwell specifically has come to mind because this week, early on, DeAndre Swift kind of limited with an ankle injury. Don't think it'll keep him out of action or anything, but what if something happens to Swift? I know we don't want it to happen, but we always have to be prepared. It's not like Swift hasn't had his share of injuries throughout his career. If something goes down, or if you have Swift, you almost need to make sure that you have Gainwell on standby. Remember, Gainwell was the starting running back to start the season, and then Swift came on in week 2 and hasn't looked back. But Gainwell has been the guy, and probably Nick Sirianni will not hesitate to go back to him if something happens to Swift. This is a team that is 4th in the NFL in rushing attempts. They will run the ball a lot, and they have possibly the best offensive line in the entire game. We know what Gainwell can do. We know he's good at catching passes. We know that they'll even use him near the goal line, even though he's not a big guy, but he'll get some touchdowns if the opportunity arises. Gainwell has got a ton of upside as a handcuff. So again, if you're a Swift owner, you probably want Gainwell there on your bench somewhere. And even if you don't have Swift, he's not the worst option in case of emergency. And then now I'm going to do something that I almost never do because, well, there's risk here. Talk about a player who, by the time you watch this, has already played. So if he goes off on Thanksgiving Day, I'll just go ahead and say, now I called it. But I need to talk about Tucker Kraft, the tight end for the Green Bay Packers. So you probably know that Luke Musgrave on IR with that lacerated kidney. Not a good situation there. We know he's going to be out at least 4 weeks. We'll see how long it is before he recovers. But obviously, he is out. And then Josiah DeGuara also probably out for Thursday because he's got a hip injury. Not that he's done much anyways. But a lot of people are excited to see what Tucker Kraft could do with his opportunity. Now, you know Musgrave has been the starter, and a lot of people high on Musgrave because he was one of the first tight ends drafted in this class. He was a second rounder. But don't forget, the Packers then took Tucker Kraft in the 3rd round. So for a tight end, that's still pretty high draft capital. There are some people who had him as a top 5 prospect among all the tight ends. This was a great tight end class, as we've seen. Didn't get as much publicity in certain rounds because he was out of South Dakota State, where he played there with legend Pierre Strong. Kraft is a very intriguing athlete at the position. I mean, if it weren't for Musgrave, he might have been starting this whole year. Now we'll see what he can do. So again, I'm talking about these players right now before the Thursday game. I don't know what Kraft did or did not do, but even if he didn't make a big splash on the field, I will say he's definitely worth stashing if you need a tight end, if you've been streaming tight end, because he's going to get the opportunities. This is an offense that's going to need some more playmakers because Christian Watson just ain't it this year. Dontayvion Wicks also hurt. Kraft is an athletic tight end, always worth taking a flyer on. Now that Thanksgiving is over, time to refocus on football. Make sure you set your winning lineups for Sunday and get ready for the playoffs. So make sure that you check out all of our videos in this week's playlist, start, sit, and everything you need to win.